Welcome to the Naavik Gaming Podcast, where it is our mission to explore the business and future of video games. We bring together the industry's brightest builders, investors, and thinkers to keep a pulse on current events, dissect emerging trends in games, share lessons learned, and have a great time. This podcast is also part of Naavik's growing ecosystem, which ranges from free and premium research to consulting and advisory services. For more information, visit www.naavik.co. Now, let's jump into the episode. Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Bush, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Elad Levy, founder and CEO of Dive. Elad, welcome.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. This is going to be a lot of fun today. The main theme of today's conversation is going to be game analytics, and we'll also be spending time discussing what you and the team are building at Dive. But I actually want to start with some background because, Elad, you are a serial entrepreneur who has seen a lot and done a lot. And according to LinkedIn, Dive is the fourth company you founded. So I thought it would be fun to initially lay the foundation for this conversation just by unpacking your journey and digging into some of the lessons learned along the way. Does that sound cool with you?
Yes, of course. It's just fun. Like building companies and products is something I really enjoy, and I do it for years. So for me, that is my actual hobby. I don't have hobbies, so.
Awesome. Yeah, I relate with a bunch of that too. So your first three companies, Centuno Solutions, Go Wild Casino, and then Pacific Interactive, I believe all had something to do with online or social casino. So I'm just curious, why did you narrow in on that market, and what did you learn about operating in the casino genre over that decade?
I actually started, we have a mandatory military service in Israel. So I was recruited for a cybersecurity team, and I worked in cybersecurity for the first 2 years of my life. And then when I got out, they needed someone on cybersecurity for an online casino. So that's just how I ended up in that industry. It was kind of a coincidence. It wasn't planned. So the first company, it still exists, 888. It's a big one, and when you are inside a company, and I'm sure that it happens to many entrepreneurs, when you see things that are done wrong, you think to yourself, "Whoa, there must be a better way to do that." So that was basically it. I said, we can probably build a brand and execute it better. So that's exactly what we did. And after a few years, that was with Go Wild, the online gambling and online casino industry has this nightmare called regulation and legal. And it's exhausting. It's like instead of working, you just argue with legal about, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do user acquisition here? Can you use this technology? It's just not fun at some point. So that's the point that we switched to social casino. And social casino is kind of it's a very nice it's a very nice trick of basically producing the same content but without the legal problems. Social casino, you play for virtual coins, so you basically can deposit money, but you cannot withdraw it. And because you cannot withdraw it, then the clause of betting is not relevant, so it's not really gambling.
Right. No, that's super interesting, and I'm curious too. We'll talk more about kind of what you learned and how you improved as you went along in social casino. But I also just want to step back and just ask, as a founder, how did you improve as a founder at each step of all your four companies? I imagine you've seen and learned quite a bit along this journey so far.
Yes, of course. It's natural because it's like you take the lessons from every founder has his body filled with scars, basically, of every company he ever built. And those scars are, the lessons that he drags with him forever. whether it's like it's the partners that you choose, and keeping the company lean to not overspend, and take a ton of lessons and working with small teams. And this is all stuff that you learn along the way, and it's normal. But obviously from every company I learned a different lesson. And it's fun because I kind of like took all that experience and put it into Dive.
Yeah, could you maybe just walk through like a lesson that you learned from each of those companies and maybe how you've implemented it?
For me, and it's actually relevant to today's market, is keeping lean. It's very easy to like burn a ton of money on, I know, office. It used to be offices, now it's mostly remote, but offices and catering in the office, and a lot of like overspending a lot of stuff, or hiring people that are super expensive. But today the world is actually really small, and keeping it lean is really easy. So it's just you have a Google, you have the Google G Suite and Slack and a few like Jira and a few other tools, and that's it. And you already build a remote team. So keeping it lean was something that helped us survive always. And we kept it lean all the way, like until we sold it. With the previous company, Pacific Interactive House of Fun. I'm always, it's funny, but it's real. Our offices were some like an old apartment that was above a pizzeria. That was the one in Buenos Aires, and the one in Israel was like in the worst neighborhood that you can imagine.
No.
And it all adds up. If you save a few bucks here and a few bucks there, it all adds up. And and then big companies also do that over time. So Playtika at some point declouded everything. They said, why would we pay? Why would we overpay? The cloud costs when you can cross the street and buy a hard drive for a fraction of the price. It doesn't make sense. So they declouded everything. And if I have to choose whether to spend money on, I don't know, on cloud, on beautiful offices, or perks, or giving bonuses to the people, I would definitely prefer this money going to the people instead of those things, because that's at least my point of view.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think is a timeless lesson, especially as the economy, the industry is cyclical, but staying lean affects how you reinvest at any point in that time. And in general, focus is a valuable trait to have. Anyways, I want to talk a bit more about the last company you founded before we get into Dive, which was Pacific Interactive, which developed House of Fun. It ended up being acquired by Playtika in 2014. I'm curious. I mean, as your third company there, that shows that you learned and improved to be able to have a pretty solid exit there, and the social casino space. But I'm curious also what you learned about integrating a company and a game into a larger conglomerate like Playtika. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, House of Fun was, I think the first and most important thing that we had was timing. And then we had the team, you add to that capital, and there you go. You have like a formula for success. So we got acquired super fast, even too fast, if you ask me. But Playtika, it was a great experience. It was fun, but then for me personally, I really love small teams, and I operate better on small teams. So when you have over 1,000 people, and when you want to hire someone, you need to like argue with the HR on why they need to allocate and open a position, and there's a budget. These things, to be honest, are exhausting. So on the other hand, there's a lot of like inter-office, there's like a lot of game studios in Playtika, so we've learned a lot, they learned a lot from us. There's a lot of exchange of know-how, about how to operate games, how to monetize better, how to improve user acquisition. For me personally, I prefer the lean and small. It's more agile and easier to move this way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm starting to notice a pattern of what makes you exhausted. It's, people setting the rules for what you can and can't do and how you're allowed to move, which is very entrepreneurial of you.
That sandbox is not fun. Like playing in that sandbox is not fun for many people. That's why they say, I want to do my own thing. And most of them do.
Right. Well, that's interesting. To hear about your take. I'm also curious, you mentioned that the acquisition might have happened too early, in your opinion. Can you unpack that a little bit? And maybe just like if there's a broader lesson in there?
We were growing like crazy. And our multiplier that we sold the company was pretty low. The contract was pretty favorable on their side. And I think that probably a strong advisor would have helped in that sense, something that we were missing, because many VCs, first of all, many VCs are not that hands-on, okay? And we didn't raise from a VC, we raised like from a private equity, which was another... maybe was not the right way to go, because VCs understand when they see something grow, they will let it cook a little bit more so they can make more money. The mentality when you have a private investor is like he sees an offer, he grabs it because he cashes out and gets some money over his investment. So we were growing like really fast, really fast, and in my opinion, we probably should have waited a bit longer, but an opportunity presented itself, and eventually it was decided to sell. And it was fun because we got a really sweet deal from Playtika. They offered the founding team to kind of have another exit with them because they were preparing to sell. So we kind of sold the same company twice in a way.
Well, that's the way to do it. Why not? That's super interesting. And I'm curious, I mean, your time at Playtika, is that when the idea for Dive came about, or was that later?
No. Playtika was that's something that is true for big companies. It's a playground. It's like a playground. It's like you have the toys and budget to experiment, so you can build tools, you can build teams, and then after a year kill the team or kill a product. And there's a ton of budget, so it's easy to experiment with that budget. So I was lucky enough to grow this company to at its peak. I think that House of Fun reached like 300 million in annual gross or something like that, like a crazy number. Something I can't even remember, but it was like huge. And then I obviously, like every other game studio, started using third-party tools, but ended up developing everything in-house, because at some point you need an edge over your competition, and you cannot get that edge from an off-the-shelf tool. You must develop something of your own. So we did everything from like marketing tools and CRM and then like engagement and live ops and data, a ton of just custom tools that helped us have an edge in the industry. And yes, sometime after I got out, I started thinking, what if we pack this whole thing into all this knowledge that I have gained into a service and offer a better version of it? Because in Playtika, actually, all the tools that we've built were tailored to House of Fun. That's another mistake that many companies do. They don't build, and it's okay. It's normal. Like they have a successful game, they start building tools, but the tools are tied. They're like completely tied to that game. They cannot extrapolate those tools and use them for another game. So Dive was like, let's build the tools first, make it platform game agnostic, like we can hook it up to everything, and then see it's a different approach. One is we start with the tools, the other we start with the product. If you're building a new company, definitely start with the product. That's the most important thing. For me, it was kind of like I had the time, I had the money, I bootstrapped Dive. I said, what the hell, let's take a year or so and take our time and build it right and see what happens then.
Cool. I also didn't realize Dive was bootstrapped. Have you raised any money up to this point, or has it been bootstrapped the whole way?
No, it was bootstrapped the whole way. There was a couple of angel investors that asked to get in because they wanted to be part of it, but no, it was bootstrapped, and we got into profit like a couple of years afterwards. So I managed to get the money I put back, and I don't need to put any more money from my pocket. So that always makes me happy, like as an entrepreneur, investor.
That's really cool. Congrats on the success of doing it that way. Well, I guess before we move on, we should probably better define what Dive is and what exactly it is that you're building. So Dive, you've now been building for 4 years now. Could you, to start, maybe just fill the audience in on what exactly does Dive offer and who exactly do you serve?
So I pack 20 years of my knowledge and experience into a company, and we started doing consulting, just like you guys. But then we realized that the tools out there suck because they're not designed, like all the tools out there are not designed for games. They want to grab a bigger market share, so they target apps or dating apps or e-commerce or like different, but you cannot compare an e-commerce cart to a shooting game or like a builder or an MMORPG. So the whole dynamics around data and live ops and CRM, everything around it changes. So we started just developing tools because we couldn't find any, and then it became a combination of a platform and a service. And this is Dive. Dive is a combination of a platform and a service. We deploy our platform and our tools. Those tools are designed 100% for games. And I think we're probably the only, there are a lot of tools out there, but we are probably the only game operators. So we know how to run games at scale. And that's a huge difference because we've been on the other side of the game studios, and we know at every point what they need, whether it's data or live ops or anything of that sort. So this is Dive. We deploy our platform, and then we understand that there is no one size fit all. So we custom and tailor the platform and the tools and the service to every client. We have weekly calls with every client. We sit with we speak with the product managers, and we have a monetization manager also in our team to see if we can help them get a bump in revenue. So it's a combination of a few things that basically all focus on data first, because for us this is if the foundation of data is right, then everything around it starts making sense, whether it's live ops or marketing or analyzing game progression or churn or whatever you want to get insight for.
Awesome. And could you provide just a snapshot of like the current state of the business at this point, 4 years on? Like what level of scale are you operating at? Like how many companies are you serving? Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Every game for us is an overhead. We are serving 80 games. We crossed a 60 million MAU, monthly active users mark, not too long ago. And we're probably the only cross-platform company out there because we do mobile, PC, web, and then Roblox, Minecraft, and Web3. So we cover basically probably every platform. Even if you have a messenger game, we would probably be able to adapt. So people do not realize that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in platforms that are not popular. And we have adapted to those needs by building different tools and SDKs to hook up with those platforms. So today, that's the state of the business. We are profitable for the past 2 years. And our platform, we call it a platform because it's just a ton of tools that we developed. We started with data validation and integrity, and then we added segmentation and A/B testing, campaign management, remote configs, a ton of things. And then we start out of box with like 20, 30 dashboards that we build for every game studio. But we got to, like, we have game studios that we have 4 product managers, and we got to building them 300 dashboards because, they need a ton of different angles to like look at the business or the game from different, like from this angle, from that angle, from a total revenue of the game studio, from like sometimes it's just aggregation of all their games, because CEOs, it's funny, but CEOs just want to wake up in the morning and see the revenue report. They don't care about all the rest. But game designer needs, I don't know, he wants to like test the game economy, so he needs like a progression analysis or churn points in the game. Marketing, whatever dashboard you build for them, they need to download it to an Excel. It doesn't matter what you do. So they always need to download it to Excel. So it's always tables of, campaigns and ROI, ROAS, country. It's the same things. But so we hook up with everything. We hook up with attribution providers and ads and Facebook and Google, and we centralize everything in one place. We build a data warehouse for every game studio, for every game. And it helps crossing. When you have everything in one place, you can extract a ton of insight, because you can cross the crash reports with the progression analysis, with the user acquisition, and it gives a whole new level of like, I think it levels the field for game studios, because big companies have been doing that for years. So that is one of the reasons that they're very successful and will continue being successful, because they're already at that point. And I think this is why the consolidation is also happening in the industry. But new game studios really suffer, because the only way to do that, you cannot take an off-the-shelf tool. You have to either build an in-house team or take Dive. That's the only. Right. There are not a lot of options there, But
I guess one area I'd like to poke a bit deeper into, when you were talking about your time at Playtika, you said the way that you built an edge was by building the tools in-house, and now you're on the other side of the fence, building the tools for everyone to create more of a level playing field, as you put it. Could you maybe just unpack a little bit more about why teams should work with you and Dive instead of building their own tools, for both like big teams and small teams? Just like, could you unpack why that is, and like what the extra value proposition of Dive is there?
I think the number one problem is cost. Like many game studios that's a really funny expression that they use. We have a data guy. There is no data guy. It's like saying we have a developer, but it's not just a developer. There's a backend guy, there's a front end, there's like a ton of elements in a game. It's the same thing for data. There's an engineer, there's an analyst, there's data scientists, there's a data DevOps for like maintaining everything and waking up at night when a process fails. And it's babysitting, and it involves a lot of code. So building it in-house, you will have to probably start with at least 2 to 3 people on the head count. And those are people that are really expensive because they get poached all the time by the competition. So you just start with like 2 to 3 people on the head count, and then you add to that the tools. And the tools are really, really expensive. Like the off-the-shelf tools are super expensive. So we have, all our tools are proprietary, so we have a really competitive price, and we can offer all that for a fraction of the price of what it would have cost you to build it in-house. Usually our competition is, yeah, it's like, I know that management decided to like build it in-house, or if it's a really really indie game studio with no funding, I just tell them, guys, use an off-the-shelf tool or something and get back to me when you have funding, because we try not to work with unfunded game studios. Those are games that would probably never scale.
Could you talk to me a bit more about your live ops tools? I'm just curious, even from your days, at building House of Fun or even earlier, just what you have learned about better tracking live ops and how those learnings have been embedded into your data platform.
So the way we treat live ops the same way we treat data. We tailor and customize it to every client. But there are several, let's call it not generic, but for example, segmentation. You can segment by, revenue or recency or the install date or stuff like that. But depending on the game, let's say that there's a game based on trophies, though you want to segment all the people that won over X trophies in their lifetime. This is a custom attribute that we will have to tailor for that client. So the same way we're nothing about us is generic. We tailor and custom everything to every client. And when you start doing live ops properly, you would start to see a bump in revenue or engagement immediately, because different people consume content in a different way, and the engagement habit or the deposit habit for every type of player is different. Some people play 5 hours a day, some people play 5 minutes a day, some people will only play in the weekends. It changes, and if you segment or personalize the content and the offers properly, then you can increase lifetime value because you keep them more engaged in the game. And so that's the way we see it. It's live ops is tools that helps maximize LTV, lifetime value, and the more you maximize LTV, the more you can spend on marketing.
Great. And I'm curious, what's next for Dive? Is it more of the same, scaling up, or are you going to be adding new tooling, new features, you do something? What's next?
So we noticed that on the live ops side, many of the game studios use us as if it was a CRM. So we want to add more CRM features to our tools. This is something that is so popular in other industries, but games really do not understand that. Like, there's an onboarding journey that happens in a standard CRM, like day 1, welcome email, day 2, this, day 3, that, and day 7, I don't know, we give you an offer. You didn't convert, I don't know, day 10, we give you another offer, we lower the price point. There's like the whole journey in CRM that are really popular in e-commerce tools, but games are really behind in that sense. So we're trying to add these kind of cool features to games as well. How do you treat dormant users? How do you reactivate users that churn or are likely to churn? So it's really like different buckets of engagements of users, and then segmenting those buckets properly and treating them in a different way. So we're playing a lot with those kind of features, and it's mostly coming from the clients, like every healthy product company. Clients say, I need this. For example, we launched our tool and we have a calendar for our live ops. So you can you have an actual calendar that you can drag and drop, like sales or different activities. And the reason is because live ops and marketing people, they work with calendar all the time. There's like, what do we have this month? Christmas, Halloween, Father's Day, Mother's Day, whatever, and then according to that, they start building the idea of the campaign, the art and stuff. So that's why we built a calendar. And then one of the first features that one of our clients said was clone month, because they're lazy. They're like, hey, we need like most of the months we do like, thanks God it's Friday, lazy Sunday, so let's clone month and do the whole thing again. So that was it. It's coming from the clients. The clients request those features, and it's still a small team. We're not even 15 people on the head count, so we still keep it tight and lean. And I prefer a small amount of people that work really hard than a lot of people that are like mediocre. So we're still lean and efficient, and focus on on keeping it lean also for our clients. We actually monitor their infrastructure and cost every month, and if we see a deviation, then we contact them and start helping them optimize that. It's really our success. Our direct success is our clients, so it's really important for us that our clients succeed. I actually do intros from time to time to VCs, because to help them out if they need to do another round or something. And it's fine, because I love the industry. It's something that the company didn't start from, let's build another company and sell it. It started from something fun as a boutique, as something small and fun, and it came from passion, not a different type of approach.
Yeah. Well, that all sounds really interesting, especially how feedback from users is sort of pushing the scale of the vision, as you said, to be a bit more like a CRM, to be even bigger and more exciting. And it's happening organically. And I think that's really cool.
It is. Yeah. And we find different types of clients all the time. That's the fun part. Because we went through this every year we find a different type of client. So the last type of client we found lately is publishers, because publishers are like, they're really good on deal sourcing and biz dev and user acquisition. They don't want to build a data team in-house. It's a pain, they need to babysit that. It's a headache for them. So they're like, okay, they outsource everything to us. So we actually have a few publishers on mobile, on Web3, Roblox. So it's fun, because we deploy all our BI platform and knowledge, and we work with 10, 20, 30 games for a single client, and it's really exciting. So that's a really new breed of client that started emerging lately.
Cool. Well, let's shift gears and talk about game analytics a bit more broadly, lessons learned, best practices.
Of course.
Teams at different stages should best use analytics. And to start, I'm not sure how many startups use Dive versus larger companies, but through your experience with Dive, or even as an advisor or board member to various startups, what do you find that small teams often get wrong with game analytics or are too slow to set up?
I think that data and product development in general has a specific order that you must follow. And sometimes I see, game studios doing it wrong or wasting energy in the wrong places. They will, obsessed with D1, for example, where, if your D28 is high, who cares about D1? That's like the money comes from D28. It's not coming from D1. D1 is important if you're launching a hyper casual game. Then the first days are important. But if it's an in-app purchases focused, high LTV, game as a service, call it whatever you want, or let's call it long-term content, quality content game, then D1 is not that important. You can have a really horrible D1 as long as your tail is high enough so that we actually build a dashboard. We call it retention without D0. Like, we start the retention different. Why? Because let's say you have a basketball game, And for some reason, it was published in a phishing website. So all the people that will come there will churn because they want phishing. They're not interested in basketball. And then your D1 will drop to its knees, it will be really low. But then if you publish it in the right place and focus the traffic, then your D1 will spike. On the other hand, those who actually love the game and stay in the game because the content quality is good, that will reflect more on the D14, 28, etc. So quite often I tell game studios, guys, just who cares about D1, It's depending on the game, of course. Obviously, if it's a hyper casual, it's all about the first days,
right?
But we actually
that makes sense.
Don't work a lot with hyper casual because we try to look for games that are built to last, that will last for ages. So
yeah. Well, what about I'm also just curious about the flip side of things too for the larger companies on that side of the spectrum. You already mentioned how one lesson learned there is how sometimes larger companies, they'll build tooling around one game instead of thinking a bit more broadly about how to serve the portfolio as a whole. I'm just curious if there are any other larger lessons learned or pieces of advice that you would have to larger companies who are wrestling with data and tooling too.
I'm amazed, but it's another type of client that we have. I call it old dinosaurs. It's companies that exist in the industry for years, but for 5 or 10 years tried building teams in-house and just got sick of it because it's a very common thing that happens in technology, in data and technology. A guy comes, he builds an entire team and tools and everything. Then he gets poached by the competition and moves to another company. And the new guy that comes in said, everything the previous guy did is shit. Throw it away and let's start from scratch. Boom. 3 years migration, 4 years migration. And that happens all the time. So we have clients that come to us and are like, upper management or product managers, like I'm sick of it. They just want to see a report and they cannot even extract a report and they have tens of people. And it's it's something that happens quite often. If you build a data team in-house, you must have someone with experience. It's very hard taking a guy that worked in e-commerce and shifting him to games. And then I think the most important thing, and that's also a requirement for us to work with, you need a product guy that knows what he wants, like that knows how to ask the right questions. Because and we try helping and guiding even product managers sometimes on how to monitor the game economy or check for inflation if there's a live ops event and all of a sudden revenue drops. It's not rocket science, you gave too much free currency, then people stop paying. It's not that complicated. But many even big companies get it wrong, and I'm like, whoa, they release like this huge feature and then the revenue drops. I'm sure you guys see it as well.
Yeah, it happens for sure. I also want to discuss more of like the future of game analytics. The games industry is always changing. It seems like Dive as a platform and as a team is, flexible and has lots of customization to, support teams across the spectrum. One area you mentioned is Web3. So I'm kind of curious to hear your take on that. And maybe specifically, how should these Web3 teams be thinking similarly or differently about their analytics, given the newer blockchain elements or open marketplaces that are now involved? And how is Dive positioned to help support those teams in those more customized ways too?
So we have a few clients. We have a few important clients. We're serving the Sandbox. We have Chrome Away. We have a lot of super interesting clients in that space. And our challenge was combining all the sources of data, because some things are like, we try to collect as much as stuff as we can from the chain. Obviously, it's easy. So we connect to, I don't know, whatever you have, Polygon, use ChainStack,
Solana, Ethereum.
yeah, there's a gazillion types, and and we try to take everything there. But the same problems are happening there, because uh, developers send garbage, and when you try to organize this garbage, then you cannot extract insight if the data quality is not good. So we have, with the same integrity tools that we use to control data coming from our SDK, we also applied it to the data coming from the chain, and then we combine this data with data coming from the actual client. If there is if it's a website, if it's a Unity downloadable, whatever it is. So it's a combination of a few sources, which is something that obviously, because we can custom and tailor everything, it's very easy for us to do. It's kind of a niche, if you ask me personally. I mean, I'm still waiting for a very high quality game to appear and really take control of the industry, because people, it seems to me like a lot of people, they're not really players, the end users, they're users, and they are busy with speculation and not playing. And it kind of contradicts my philosophy about games should be fun and content should be of good quality. So it kind of contradicts these base rules for me. So it's hard for me to process it a little bit. Maybe I'm old school.
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely big question marks out there. I mean, I think if you just look at the cycle that we're in right now, it definitely is, the pretty standard hype cycle, or even just like a U curve. If you look at the games that have come out and are planning to come out, where we saw the explosion of the play to earn, the very speculative games, and then now I was looking at the month of February, and not a single notable Web3 game came out. Zero, literally zero. But we also know that there's a ton of funding and such for game developers and studios around the world that are making games. It's just the actual good games take time, whereas the initial rush, it was more
exactly
financialized experiences.
It kind of reminds me of Roblox when it started. It feels like hyper casual was forced into, like, Web3 feels like a kind of like a hyper casual metaverse, whatever you call it, was forced to have a payment method, and they call it Web3 games. But it's not natural, and I think that I always think that content is king. You cannot build games from data. You build games by quality product and quality game design, and then you use data as a channel for getting insight, and getting feedback. And that feedback is not always coming through data and dashboards. It's also coming from actual users that play the game, or focus groups, or whatever you want to call it. But I'm waiting for a company to actually launch. I mean, if you take an Blizzard Activision game and you add Web3 to it, yes, that would probably make more sense. But, as another payment, whatever. But building the whole game around it as a play to earn, it's kind of...
That doesn't make sense. I guess my bottom line of just kind of talking about the hype cycle there is that in the next couple of years, I think we'll see more shots that are much more quality game first.
Probably.
And maybe by then, too, we'll see...
They're getting better. They are getting better. I mean, they are getting better because, the art is better. I mean, I think a game should be fun and it should be an experience. Yeah, they will figure it out. Eventually, they will probably figure it out, and it will curve a niche just like hyper casual. And hyper casual is in decline, obviously, because again, you cannot sell. You cannot. You have like people will stick if the content is good. That's they will play it for 5 days and then throw it away and move to the next game. But you cannot build a company on hits. Well, you can because hyper casual was built that way, but it kind of most hyper casual companies ended up in the same place of let's build now a more casual or more quality game because it's hard like living from one hit to another hit.
Yeah. I guess the other emerging trend of note recently is AI. So I just wanted to ask a question to you about that, and I guess especially like how or if you think AI is going to change the way teams work with data, conduct analysis, run these sorts of tests in their games. Do you think about AI at all as you're building up Dive and how that could change
We
things?
do think about it, but I again, like there is a stages of a game that when it kicks off without funding, it needs really basic APIs. Then it grows. They need economy and progression analysis and churn. Then it scales again with marketing. They need the user acquisition analysis and creative planning, etc. Data is kind of the same thing. So from my experience, and I tested a lot of things, plain data analysis, like a human being sitting next to a product manager and analyzing the game insight with him is, I saw the most, like the biggest needle movement, you can say, the biggest revenue gains from that type of work. Just plain old data analysis, classic ad hoc analysis of human beings sitting with each other and bumping ideas. I guess the next step after that would be machine learning. And people confuse that a lot with AI, but it's machine learning, prediction models, churn prediction. This is also something that will add you a bit of an edge, because when you get to a certain scale and you need to squeeze 0.5% or 1%, that's a lot of money. So that is for me the next step. Now, I'll be honest with you, most companies are not even there. They're still stuck on plain data analysis. So we're really far from AI. I mean, you can probably market a buzzword tool and say, we're doing that and this automatically. But to be honest, I mean, even pricing, it's like the best models I've ever seen was built by human beings sifting through data for months and then building a machine learning model and then testing that in the game. But you cannot click a button and magically things will happen. It's a myth. It's not true. Even in machine learning, every time you launch a model or like a scoring model, you have to test it, and then it takes a few months of data to validate it. And for me, it's kind of a mirrors, smoke. So it takes a lot of smoke and mirrors there. You guys work with game studios all the time and you consult them. Sometimes a change in the messaging of a pop-up will make way more money than trying to apply some, AI voodoo to the game. I've seen it over and over.
Yep. I guess I'm curious, is there anything in the future of gaming analytics, any emerging trends, anything else of note that you're excited about more generally about where the future of gaming analytics is going?
I think that the tools and the platform that we built in Dive is one of the few that you can build a data-driven game with. This is something that many there are not a lot of, maybe the biggest game studios do that, but most of the small ones they're like really light years away from that. And when I mean data driven game, it means that it will adapt according to, to your level, to the segment, to your deposit habit. And it's not something you can automate. It's something that you will tailor and customize. And the game studios that, invest in that area would probably, I think that is the future. Another interesting thing is, I think that the classic KPIs are dead. It will be a bit harsh if I say that. But the classic APIs are like you need a D1 of this and a D7 of that. For example, we don't look at the classic D1 anymore. We look at rolling retention, only on rolling retention, because I know people play only in the weekends. People sometimes play only the weekend. So their D1 will be horrible, but they will play every weekend. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means that his login behavior or his playing behavior is different. We try to look at those metrics in a very different way than most out-of-box, off-the-shelf tools, and tailor it according to the game type. But hopefully people will understand that. Like the experienced one understand that 100%, because the new game studios are still learning about what is data. Some of them don't understand basic APIs. It's kind of a education mission that we have as part of our company, and we're doing a lot of blogs and trying to somehow pass the knowledge to other game studios so that they can learn as well. But
right. Well, I have two final questions for you, Elad. First, is there anything else in the games industry beyond what we've talked about today that you're particularly excited about? I know you've been an advisor to startups. You've sat on boards. I know you look around a lot. Do you see anything that excites you?
Free-to-play started declining, and many see that already. Some of it is leaking to other platforms, and some of it is because people just got sick of it. But on the other hand, I see more mid-core games coming to mobile, and they are really fun. So, if you look at the last games in the last year, for example, that came out, they are really way more complicated. The production is the production is way more complicated. It's not a game you launch in 6 months. It's something that takes a couple of years to produce, with a lot of art and quality content. And I want my kids to play quality games. I miss quality games, and this is something that I'm really excited about. I just wish that this trend will continue and we will see more mid-core or AAA game studios investing in mobile or iPad, or something that is it's because it's a fun platform. It's easy. You don't have to do the whole PC special chair headset and everything, or a PlayStation. You just sit on the couch and you can play Diablo. That's amazing, man. This is amazing for me.
Yeah. I think it is amazing, and I think we'll see more of those kinds of games. Hopefully, these companies with these games can navigate the more difficult waters lately. Just figuring out all the post IDFA world. So it might take a little bit for that trend to truly accelerate, maybe another year or 18 months or something, I would guess. But I'm right there with you. There's a lot of exciting stuff that has a lot of potential.
Look at the, you look, I love, I don't know if they're in GDC, every GDC, they're the popular games that everyone are talking about. So, the pre-pandemic GDC, everyone was speaking about hyper casual, and I know, really, games that are really boring to me personally. This GDC, it's, Marvel Snap and Frozen City and like games that have a lot of depth, and the art is exciting and it's fun to play, and it's just so I'm enjoying it because I see quality games and I want my kid to play that, I prefer him playing that instead of Roblox to be honest.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, final question for you. If any of our listeners want to learn more about Dive and reach out or follow you online, where should they go?
So LinkedIn is the best thing. I'm pretty hard to miss. Elad Levy Dive, but you can just drop me an email at elad@dive.games. And
perfect.
I'm super happy to in GDC. I always find myself in some finger food and beer party speaking with some indie game studio, explaining them about data, and because it's fun for me. I'm always happy sharing knowledge. I think it helps the industry as a whole.
Awesome. Well, I think people have a lot to learn from you and your experience too. Hopefully from this conversation, but hopefully for future ones too. But listen, this has been a lot of fun. I know we're at time, so we'll have to wrap up here. But thank you so much for joining and sharing your story and insights. Cool. And best wishes to the whole Dive team going forward.
Thanks. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed today's episode, whether on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, or give a 5-star review. And if you want to reach out or provide feedback, shoot us a note at podcast@naavik.co or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Plus, if you want to learn more about what Naavik has to offer, make sure to check out our website, www.naavik.co. There, you can sign up for the #1 games industry newsletter, Naavik Digest, level up your insights with our premium research platform, Naavik Pro, or contact us to learn about our wide-ranging consulting and advisory services. Again, that is www.naavik.co. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.